is 6:30, and I am calling the regularly scheduled meeting of the Carson City School Board to order. And we will begin with agenda item 1, which is adoption of the agenda as submitted for possible action. Do we have a motion?
So moved.
We have a motion by Trustee Walker and a second by Trustee Walt. Do we have any board discussion? Do we have any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye, and the motion carries. We'll move on to agenda item 2, which is the flag salute. Trustee Richard Varner will lead us.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Move on to agenda item 3, which is the superintendent's report for information only. Mr. Fueling.
Thank you, President Crossman. First, this evening, we were supposed to introduce the homecoming king and queen for Carson High, and neither one of them could make it. And the advisor, Tanea Kramer, she is sick, so she couldn't make it either. So I'm going to read what she had written up for the kids. This year's homecoming queen was Anna Turner, and homecoming king was Lucas Wold. Anna was unable to be here tonight because she has a volleyball game. Lucas is unable to attend because he has football practice. Anna's coronation scores a generational trifecta, as her mother, Heather Leitenberg Turner, was honored as Carson High's 1991 homecoming queen, and her grandmother, Joanne Lest Leitenberg, was honored as Chino High School's 1961 homecoming queen. Ranked third in her class with a 5.1 GPA, Anna has never received lower than an A throughout her high school career. She is a 4-year varsity athlete in volleyball and 3-year varsity swimmer. After high school, she plans to major in biochemical engineering. She's taking it easy, clearly. Lucas is a 2-sport athlete playing on the varsity football team as a captain, as well as his favorite sport, wrestling. Wold is an accomplished wrestler, having taken second at state, as well as being one of the captains for the team. After high school, he plans to wrestle in college and looks to major in either firefighting or physical therapy. As for highlights of homecoming week, the theme was Disney Throwback, which highlighted this generation's Disney Channel movies and TV shows. To go with this childhood theme, the homecoming charity was to collect new books, bubbles, and Legos to donate to the renowned Children's Hospital in Reno. They were able to collect over 100 items through student and staff donations and monetary donations from clubs like FBLA. And then they ended the week with the homecoming dance, where they sold 875 tickets. So, and Mr. Carson's had reported otherwise that homecoming week was just excellent all the way around. So he was really pleased as his introduction to that time of year here at Carson High. Some other items, just wanted to note that FFA at Carson High took first place in the state soil judging competition, which happened in Ely. I don't actually know what that is, but they won, so that's good. And because of that, they are going to be going to nationals. They also hosted a fundraiser called the Cow Plop fundraiser, which basically there was a cow and a checkerboard, and then things happened, and wherever it happened, that person won. But that person who won ended up being one of our teachers, Mr. Chris Nerska, and then he donated that money right back to the group, which I thought was a really just a nice thing to help them out. So, noting we have some. I just wanted to recognize Mayor Lori Bagwell. She has, in building a relationship with our re-engagement specialist, Megan Newman, specifically trying to combat absenteeism in the community or with the schools, but recognizing that it's a community problem. She was speaking with a group and I think helped drum up some interest in helping the school district with that endeavor. So we're hoping to formalize that with a meeting here in the near future. And again, just appreciate Mayor Bagwell taking interest in that. Lastly, we have a winter coat and sweatshirt drive going on. Just wanted to make sure that was known. Any new youth coats, sweatshirts, and jackets can be dropped off at the McKinney-Vento office at 618 West Musser through November 17th. Last thing, just want to note, I went to a meeting last night, the Proficiency Scale Advisory Team meeting, which was a meeting of many of our teachers and teacher leaders in the district, looking at how proficiency scales are being kind of rolled out in terms of kind of curricular standards, and how to break those down in ways that can better, I think, support teachers and students. And it was great. There was a lot of interest. There was, I think, over 40 people in the room, 40 teachers. And it's, you have those moments where you're sitting in a meeting and you know who the smartest person in the room is. And I'm sitting in that meeting and I'm realizing I know that I am not the smartest person. I am the least smartest person in that room. The conversations that were going on were just amazing. So I really appreciated that and our teachers' time trying to help make that happen. That is all I have.
Thank you for that report, and congratulations to Anna and Lucas. That makes for a fun and exciting week. We'll move on to agenda item 4, board reports and board member comments. For information only, Trustee Varner.
Yeah, tonight I have no NASRI report, but briefly, I think Mr. Walker has something.
And I jumped over our high school representatives because I was looking for board members. So if you hold on, Trustee Varner, I'll go ahead and let's go ahead and have Carson High School representative. And are you Paulina? No. Alex. Okay, please state your name for the record and then I'll try to remember. Alex. Okay, and you have to turn the microphone on till it's green at the bottom. Yep, great.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Alexander Munoz, and I'm Carson High School School Board Representative. And currently, your school board representatives at Carson High School are working on implementing a new dress-up week called Rivalry Week. And I do have some flyers here if you guys would like me to hand them out. Yeah? All right. So Rivalry Week came out of the idea that Carson and Douglas have one of the biggest and oldest rivalries in the state of Nevada. And it's something that should be celebrated, not only for the athletes, but also for the student body to have something to be excited about. So me and Paulina, my other co-representative, we made a new dress-up week called Rivalry Week, where we're gonna be dressing up as, there's multiple dress-up days to this week leading up to the game against Douglas. And we will have lunchtime activities as well. And this year, we decided to implement something called a spirit bus. That was actually an idea by the principal, and he is supporting us 100% on this, that we will be transferring mostly underclassmen to Douglas to watch the game. And this really helps the underclassmen feel welcomed into coming into a new high school and figuring what high school is all about. So we really thought that this idea was gonna raise more school spirit. It was gonna make people feel more accepted, more, just better about coming into high school. And we really hope that you guys like this idea and that it could be something that we could continue. If you guys have any comments or anything.
So tell me, what does a mathlete dress like?
A mathlete. And a mathlete, it's basically, in short terms, it's a nerd. It's, and it's not.
No offense to our superintendent, who's one of the mathlete people.
And it's not something that should be viewed as negative. We try to keep it as positive. We actually made a whole hallway with just posters like about school spirit. I do have some pictures that I could show after if you guys are really that interested. But yeah, I mean, we try to keep it as positive as possible, include everybody. We're going to be taking pictures that whole week, posting it all over social media. We're on top of it, honestly. Any other questions?
Do we have any? Go ahead,
I
trustee
would just
Varner.
like to say, I'm glad you guys are doing things like this. I think the more you can get other kids involved throughout the school in these type of events is a good thing. And so, thank you for coming up with these kind of ideas.
Thank you.
Trustee Ramirez, did you have a comment? Go ahead.
Yeah, I think this is really exciting. In fact, I'm gonna go on Monday. I'm gonna go check it out. I love line dancing, so congratulations. You guys are doing a really good job.
Thank you.
Thank you for your report and good luck in the next week. I think it's going to be a fun week for everyone.
All right.
And
Thank you guys.
I do follow you guys on Instagram, and you're up on it on the posts. So good job.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you. And Pioneer High School, Sadie Fullerton.
I didn't forget to turn on the mic this time. Good evening, President Crossman and members of the board. I'm Sadie Fullerton, and here are the events and activities for Pioneer Academy. So we have had 136 positive behavior referrals written by staff so far this school year. PHS celebrated Week of Respect last week with lunchtime activities each day. On Monday, we decorated the courtyard with sidewalk chalk. On Tuesday, we signed an anti-bullying pledge and gave out silicone bracelets to remind students of their pledge. On Wednesday, we had a variety of board games available for students to play so they could connect with each other and make new friends. On Thursday, we outlined ways we can show respect at school and distributed uplifting stickers to participants. And on Friday, we threw kindness around like confetti by having students write kind comments on Post-it notes that went on a giant poster for everyone to see. Leadership had a blast setting this entire week up and holding these activities to promote respect and kindness at our school. Pioneer Academy will be providing parking and selling concessions for the Nevada Day Parade. Students from Jobs for Nevada graduates attended a trip to and tour of WNC last month. Two UNR graduates visited our campus and spoke to classes regarding their inventions as young entrepreneurs and their new technology business. Several PHS students visited the Project Discovery Ropes course today for leadership training, and the Pioneer Speech and Debate team will be competing this Friday and Saturday at Spanish Springs High School. That concludes our announcements, and thank you.
Thank you for that report, and good luck to the speech team this year.
Thank you.
Or this weekend coming up. Go ahead and move on to Trustee Varner for your report. Back to you.
I have nothing for NASB this week, but I think Trustee Walker may have a slight update.
Go ahead.
So just a couple things. Last week at the state board meeting, the state board moved ahead with sending the draft regulation to the Legislative Council Bureau to see if it meets the legalese that's required in law. One of the changes that they approved was instead of it starting next school year, it's slated to go into effect the 25-26 school year. And one of the big changes that I wanted to mention is, in spite of the fact that all school districts, all superintendents, many people have talked about the hardships that's going to cause school districts, they moved ahead with it. The one thing that they did do is they're going to, while it is going through that review process, they're going to ask communities to be polled about their preferences. And so I think that we want to make sure that we get wide representation, students, staff, parents, because it's going to impact everyone. And I think that in some circles, it's almost like, oh, well, we'll just have elementary kids go early. But we know that that can be problematic as well. And so there's just a lot of complex issues. I pointed out the fact that in Carson City, this has been a process that the community engaged in and decided against making that change. And so I think this is a decision that's best made by communities with feedback from the people that live in the communities. And so more about that'll be coming out. And then this weekend, I'll be traveling to Oregon for so the Pacific Region, is that the official name? The Pacific Region meeting. So anything that comes out of that, I'll report back to everyone and let them know.
Thank you. And that is important too. And if there's anything, perhaps, I don't know how much work it would be, Superintendent Fueling, to look at how that would affect our transportation, our after-school programs, what type of thing, if with the late start, maybe that would be helpful if we have asking for community members to have some information of what that might look like in Carson City. Thank you. Trustee Walt? Oh, back to Trustee Varner. I am so sorry because I was just, go ahead.
That's all right. I'm starting to feel left out, but that's all right. On Boardwick Bray, Principal Raqueta wanted everyone to know that their cookie dough fundraiser is happening now through October 16th. So if you need cookie dough, please support them. She wanted to thank everybody for supporting the school and helping them to fund field trips, family engagement nights, and classroom activities. They're also having their Dads and Donut event on October 20th from 7 a.m. to 8 a.m. They would love to see every dad, grandfather, guardian attend this event if they could. However, if a male subject or influencer cannot make it, they're also going to welcome grandparents, moms, because they don't want anybody to feel left out. And so that's on October 20th at 7 a.m. And I've been to most of those events, and I can tell you they're really well attended. And so we appreciate all the dads who come out and all the other guardians or moms, grandmas that come out. She also wanted people to know that parent-teacher conferences are coming up on October 24th, 25th, and 26th. Teachers have been or will be sending out times to sign up. Their goal is to have 100% of the families attend these important one-on-one meetings. So please sign up as soon as you can, as soon as you get the notification. And thank you for that. For Fritz Elementary, Principal Brown wanted to announce that Fritz and Carson Middle School are going to team up to hold a coffee chat with the parents living in the Parkway Plaza Apartments on Tuesday, October 19th at 10 a.m. Parents will have a chance to hear from the staff and learn about some of the great things going on at the school and how they can help their child to be a successful learner. I think that'd be an innovative idea which I support 100%, and I hope that it goes well. And that concludes my report.
Thank you, Trustee Varner. Trustee Walker, do you have a school report?
I do. So from Eagle Valley Middle School, they just finished up celebrating the Week of Respect with a number of, sounds like, color-themed dress-up days and a mixed match day. And of course, Lee threw in his, I'm sure he was wearing his Steelers jersey for the sports day on Friday. On the week of the 16th, they're going to have a recognition rally for first quarter grades, behavior, and attendance. And that leads to them being proud of having their positive point system up and running. Lots of students are earning points and prizes and are being encouraged with positive behavior. Today, the Dean of Students, Lois Linehan, who's in the audience, and Deputy Loyola provided Stop the Bleed training for teachers during PLC meetings. And I think one of the things they're most proud of is they have raised $400 for the, I hope I don't mispronounce this, the Blaver Alzheimer's Foundation. So they're doing a foundation fundraiser, and so they raised $400. So great job to Eagle Valley.
Thank you for that report. Trustee Walt?
Okay, so I don't have anything for Carson High School, although I was just told that at the end of the month, no, the beginning of November, Carson High School will be hosting the state girls and boys soccer. So that's very exciting. Oops, sorry. Okay, maybe, anyway, okay. Okay, so sorry. But we were just asked to volunteer. So that is exciting. I think it's a huge it's going to be, it's obviously it brings in an economic impact to the city. And I think it's a huge thing for Carson High as well. And I am so sorry that maybe, okay, so moving on, moving on, Empire Elementary School. So Empire Elementary School has what's calling the Green Schools National Network is coming October 12th and 13th. Empire Elementary School registration is required, but it's growing STEM opportunities by greening your school. Now I'm just going to fumble all night long. I shouldn't have looked your way. So, but then also Empire Elementary School, they continue to push for improvement in attendance, which has been very good. And so they are pushing for their families to allow children to do 5 things. Allow their children to be at school every day, be at school on time every day, to read to them and with them every night, practice math facts with them every night, and discuss weekly social emotional skills with them each week. They continue to push this. They also have a new program to acknowledge students who are doing the right things. They are their next level students. And these are the students that are there every day on time with no behavioral referrals and approvals from their teachers that have been safe, responsible, respectful, and kind. And then they can earn a next level t-shirt. And so they're continue to work on that. And through week 8, they would like to announce that they have had 185 students with perfect attendance. That is nearly 50% of their students at Empire. So go Mustangs, which goes on your, what you're talking to the mayor about as well. And so their chronic absentee update is 33 students have missed more than 10% of their school days without a doctor's note to excuse them. So I'm here to push parents, please make sure that you have a doctor's note. Send your kid with a doctor's note, and when they are absent, it is very important to do so. At this time, should I do, because I had a Parks and Rec meeting? Okay, so we had a Parks and Rec meeting last week as well, and if those of you who came in through the front doors, Parks and Rec right now is highlighting Phase 3 of the Carson River Trail System, which is the Prison Hill West, and so they're highlighting the changes in which they're going to be making there as well, because that's on their next, on the master plan. So we went over quite a bit at the board meeting. And if those of you who are ever interested in what Parks and Rec is doing, I can say there's a whole lot that they're just not doing. So they're doing a lot. But I would encourage you to visit the website, because all of the everything that they're working on is on that website. So they're doing the tennis courts, the pickleball courts, the different trailheads, the pool. I mean, you name it, they've got a little bit going on everywhere on that as well. The one thing that came of interest is a policy that they're working on, and I would encourage the public to kind of pay attention to. So right now, there's no policy for, say that if you're teaching private lessons. So say that if you go to the pool and you have your, son or daughter that is doing a private lesson, they don't have to pay a facility use fee. And so there's been complaints about that. If they're going out there and teaching tennis lessons on a park, at one of the tennis courts, there's no facility use fee. So I got on the subcommittee, and we're going to start discussing on what a policy would look like. And so I'm asking the public to, what would that be? What would be, that who's ever doing it, whether it be a business or a small business or nonprofit, what would that look like, to where it's not going to take them out of business, but yet the city is, because it puts the city at a huge liability, on that end too, if it's an organized thing. So that policy will be coming forward later after the subcommittee meets. Yeah.
Thank you for your report.
Mhm.
Trustee Clapham.
Thank you. No report from Carson Middle School tonight. Report from Mark Twain, Ms. Crookshanks, and myself would like to throw a shout out to the PTO at the school. They just continue to be great and support families in the school. They just recently completed the fall carnival, which I think I reported on last time. I apologize if I did. In the classroom, they're finishing their reading assessments. They utilize the press pre-assessment, classroom interventions, and then their post-assessments, and also their MAP testing. They're using this data to build reading intervention groups. They're very focused on providing high-quality reading interventions to the students in small groups and during daily intervention time. They're approaching their PBIS end-of-quarter school reward and school-wide quarterly awards where they recognize students for academic achievement, growth, and also attendance at school. And then they also recognize their teachers and support staff with awards for their hard work and dedication. And lastly, parent-teacher conferences are coming soon, and they are looking forward to meeting their families of the students. And that's all I have.
Thank you for your report, Trustee Ramirez.
Mine is short and sweet. Miss Zona from Silver Grove Elementary School reminds us that they are working on their final items, preparing for the pumpkin patch fall carnival, which is this coming Saturday, October 14th, from 9 to 3. And I attended last year and it was amazing. So I hope that many families, and if you guys are able to join them, you will love it. So that is all I have.
Trustee Casiopo, I see that you've joined us online. Do you have a report?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, I can.
Okay, perfect. So just so you know, there's a pretty good thunder and lightning storm going on here, so I'm trying to keep it all active. So my report for Pioneer High School, Pioneer Academy is in its first year of MTSS, the multi-tiered system of supports, which has helped redesign the student's referral process with a focus on clear student expectations for behavior. The amount of behavioral referrals in August and September have dropped in comparison to the previous school year, so they're very excited about that. Pioneer staff's also working on 2 book studies. One's with the entire instructions of staff regarding proficiency scales, and the second is centered around the book by Admiral McRaven called The Hero Code with the Leadership Team. The last, Pioneer has already increased parent guardian involvement as measured by the several orientation days prior to the start of school and an open house where a record level of parent visitors were attending in September. So things are going well at Pioneer, and this report was provided to me by Principal Zona, and that's all I have.
Thank you so much, Trustee Casiopo. And Dr. Ward from Fremont Elementary, I'll go ahead and give my report, said that they really don't have anything going on in the next 2 weeks, but she would like...
Sorry.
Okay, Joe's muted now. But Dr. Ward would like parents to look ahead to parent-teacher conferences coming up the end of October. And then I'd like to report on Carson Middle School's open house that I was able to attend the day after our last board meeting. And I realized I hadn't been in a few years because they hadn't had an open house with the pandemic. So I appreciated that. It was a great opportunity to meet my son's teachers, and some of them my other son had that I hadn't met during all of the time that we didn't have that. So that was a great opportunity that they had for the families that were there. And also last weekend, I attended the Multilingual Learner Expo put on by Dr. Tanya Scott, and that was a great first event for the city, and hopefully it continues to grow because I think there were a lot of good resources available to families, and really a great event. So I wanted to report on those. And if no other board members have comments, well, go ahead. Yeah.
I apologize. I forgot to add one last piece to the note that Mrs. Kramer left about homecoming week, and it's just an important one. She wanted to give a big thanks to Doug Torado and the guys at Michael Hull, who donated the trucks to be driven around during the homecoming parade. Mr. Carson's and myself both were able to be drivers. I'll note that The truck I drove was only $67,000 and his was 95. So I know how I rate.
Thank you for, that was a great community donation, and so good to include that. If there are no other board comments, we'll move on to agenda item 5, association reports. Do we have anyone here for an association report? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 6, which is public comment. Mrs. Cortez informs me that we have received no email public comment. Do we have anyone in here looking to give public comment? If so, I will read the directions. You can wave your hand and if you're going to, and if not, I won't read this paragraph, and that will save us a little bit of time. No, it doesn't look like anyone's interested in public comment, so I will close public comment, and we'll move on to agenda item 7, which is discussion and possible action to approve recommendations of the Benefits Committee regarding group healthcare insurance, plan design and renewal of coverage for the calendar year January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024. Approval of any insurance coverage may have a fiscal impact up to the amount contained in the budget approved by this board for possible action. And we have Mr. Dan Sadler and Melissa Davies and Mr. Winward here, Spencer Winward.
President Crossman and members of the board, thank you very much. First and foremost, I'd like to thank the committee members, our benefits committee district-wide. So thank you to Bridget Gordon, Lynn Garrett, Shalise Cruikshanks, Superintendent Fueling, Mr. Spencer Winward, Kirsten Lloyd for their work on the Carson City School District Benefits Committee. Also, special thanks to Valerie Clark and Melissa Davies, who is seated here next to me from Clark and Associates, and their entire team for all their work in negotiations on behalf of our school district. We have an excellent partnership. We work with their extreme professionals, and we're just really, really excited to continue that relationship with them. I don't want to steal any of her thunder here tonight, so I'm going to go ahead and turn things over to Melissa, and it's my pleasure to introduce her to you tonight.
Good evening, Board Trustees. Melissa Davies from Clark and Associates. I'm presenting in Valerie's absence. She's on vacation this week, lucky her. I'm happy to present good news again this year for the 2024 benefits renewal. The original proposed overall renewal came in around 9%. We discussed this with the administration and the benefits committee, who stated that their constituents are very happy with their benefits and their coverage. And if the carriers would consider lowering their rates, the renewal rates, with no plan changes, then shopping the benefits would not be necessary this year. Valerie Clark discussed this with prominence in Kansas City Life and was able to ultimately negotiate a rate pass or 0% increase, which was then presented and approved by the Benefits Committee. In addition to the rate pass, prominence and Clark and Associates, we were also able to negotiate a premium credit, which the school district can apply towards the renewal cost for the Calm app, which we hear has had great utilization among the staff members. We also recommended and approved, or the Benefits Committee approved, an increase to the buy-up dental plan, an increase in the annual max benefit and the lifetime orthodontics benefit to $2,000. Currently, it's $1,500. But ultimately, I'm proud to announce that all benefits are renewing with no increase in pricing for plan year 2024. I'm happy to answer any questions.
That's fantastic news. Do we have any questions from board members?
No, like President Crossman said, that's great news for the school district and employees. So thank you for your hard work in this, Mrs. Sadler and the rest of the benefit committee. Great job. I mean, I can't say anything more. Boy, I'm happy about it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Do we have any other questions or comments from board members? And if not, this
Hey,
is...
Laurel, I do.
Go ahead, Trustee Casiopo.
Yeah, sorry about that. So first of all, I want to ditto Richard's kudos. Thanks to Valerie and everybody for negotiating that. That's important. I know it's early, but what are you seeing out there? I mean, next year in terms of, is it too far out to tell, or are we looking at some hikes based on the way things are going? Or do you think we're going to be staying pretty close to where we were going to be, if you will.
Well, I don't have my crystal ball, but I think things are running really well. You've got a lot of new staff members that you're bringing onto the benefits, which I think helps utilization and the rates. So my hope is that things will continue and we'll have good news again next year. I think we've had pretty good news every year since I came on board with Clark and Associates, which was 16 years ago. So it's been, I think good news overall every year, but this year especially, and I hope that it'll continue, and I'll have good news again next year.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Yeah, I forgot to pack my crystal ball. That's why I was asking you. But I do appreciate everything you guys are doing. I think you've represented the district very well. So thank you.
If there are no other questions from board members, this is an action item, and I would entertain a motion.
I'll move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees accept and approve the recommendations of the Benefits Committee as submitted for the renewal of coverage for the calendar year January 1st, 2024 through December 31st, 2024, which may have a fiscal impact up to the amount contained in the budget approved by this board.
Second.
I'll second it.
Okay, well, we have a motion by trustee Walker and 2 seconds, one by trustee Varner and one by trustee Cassiopo. We'll just count one. So sorry, Joe, Richard beat you to that one. Do we have any further discussion among board members? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
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 The motion is approved. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to agenda item 8, which is discussion and possible action to approve proposed changes to CCSD policy 525, student conduct and discipline. This is the second reading for possible action. Tasha Fuson.
Thank you, President Crossman. So as President Crossman stated, this is our second reading of policy 525. When I brought it in front of you at our last meeting, it was just really to note that we needed to add restorative practices into the policy. Changes were done in obviously the 2023 legislative session, which then prompted us to revise the regulation. And when we revise regulations, we like to review policies to make sure that they're in alignment still. So those were the changes that we suggested last time. There were no requests for changes from the board last meeting. So now we're just doing our second reading and requesting approval for adoption.
Okay, do we have any other comments or questions? And if not, this is an action item.
Oh, I think I'm on. I move that the Carson City School District Board of Trustees approve October 10th, 2023 as the revised date for policy 525, student conduct and discipline. Second.
Motion by trustee Walt, second by trustee Ramirez. Do we have any further discussion? Comments? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
It's just a little delayed. Thanks, Joe. And the motion is approved. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Stay where you're at, Mrs. Fuson. Agenda item 9 is discussion on proposed changes to CCSD policy 543, safe and respectful learning environment free from bullying or cyberbullying. This is a first reading for discussion only. Tasha Fuson.
Thank you, President Crossman. So again, this actually came up as we look to revise Regulation 543. Again, revisiting the policy to make sure it was still in alignment and updated. And what Mrs. Alexander, who was assisting me in the review, what we realized is that in the 2019 session, legislative session, they did add discrimination based on race to all legislation that addresses bullying and cyberbullying, and we had not revamped our policy to add that in. So I know it's 2023 and we're going back and revisiting what was done in 2019 in that legislative session, but that's how it was found when we were reviewing the policy. So in looking at your policy changes or recommended changes, suggested changes, you can see that in each and every one of those areas, we've just literally added or discrimination based on race, or discrimination based on race throughout the whole policy. So that's the rationale or the reason why that is being added.
And just a comment I would like to add, I spoke with you before. As I first read it, I thought, well, what about discrimination based on religion or any of the other factors? And so I looked it up in the NRS, and it actually provides what discrimination of race is, and it includes all of the other categories which you are prohibited from discriminating on. So I think my suggestion would be if we could just include a footnote on that first time where we see it, and include it at the bottom of the policy that includes that definition, just in case this is the only place someone comes to look in our district and wonders whether or not we also prevent discrimination based on religion or any of those other items. So that would be my suggestion. Do we have any other comments from board members?
You're welcome.
There are
I
no-
will add that footnote and then bring it back at our next meeting.
Okay, thank you so much. And then we'll go ahead and move on to agenda item 10, which is discussion on proposed changes to CCSD Regulation 543, Safe and Respectful Learning Environment Free from Bullying or Cyberbullying, for discussion only.
Thank you very much. Tasha Fusum for the record again. So this is basically rewrite of Regulation 543. We did include in your packets the current regulation as well as a new draft. The rationale for that was the same as kind of when we talked about 525. We wanted to resequence the content so it made more sense to the stakeholder reading it by starting with definitions. So in addition to adding the pieces about discrimination based on race, there was actually 2 additional updates in the 2023 legislation, which now excludes expressions, acts, or gestures which are engaged in as part of mutual disagreement or conflict from bullying, right? So in the past session, anytime what they had passed is a different definition of bullying, which required schools, if 2 students got into a mutual fight, that we had to consider that as both combatants bullying each other. And so now this revision removes that so that you can say, no, you can have potentially 2 people get into a disagreement, a fight, where there's not an imperceived imbalance of power between the 2, or previous issues where one student was subject to bullying or cyberbullying by another student. So that is helpful. To our administrative teams, we still of course investigate and manage behavior when it comes to fights, and we still write safety plans for students, et cetera. But instead of having to launch bullying investigations on both ends as both parties being mutual victims of bullying, now we can assess the fact that it's okay, no, this is just a fight. So that was a change, and it also increased the amount of time that school administrators have to complete bullying and cyberbullying investigations from 2 days to 5 days, and that was a really important piece for our schools. It's very difficult to complete an entire investigation in 2 school days when you have to notify parents of all parties. You have to get statements from all students. You have to get tertiary statements or next level statements from people who might be around. And then if they mention somebody else to that, you have to keep going. And so they take a lot of time to do. So being able to have the additional 3 days was an important part to our school staff. So if you take a look at the draft, I'm just going to very quickly kind of walk you through what that looks like. And I would encourage any of our families who have children who experience bullying or cyberbullying and discrimination to be able to look at this regulation, because this is going to walk not only our site administrators through the process of what that looks like, but also families. If you want to know what does a bullying investigation or cyberbullying investigation look like, this gives you step-by-step directions on what the schools are required to do to respond to that. So it's very helpful to our families, again, and to our students to be able to access that and know what that looks like. So if you'll look at the new draft of the Regulation 543, it basically starts with just a statement that bullying is, and cyberbullying is, and discrimination based on race is prohibited in public schools, and then goes in and actually defines what that means. So I think that's another important fact, because that's something we work with students a lot with in the district. Just because, you know, somebody's mean to you one day or gives you a sideways look doesn't mean you're being bullied. But if it's happens often or frequently or more than once, or if that person has perceived influence over you, right? Or if we're snickering about you and talking about you, that can be bullying. But sometimes kids get this confused a little bit, and we'll get reports of, well, so and so looked at me sideways in the lunch line. They're bullying me. Okay, does it happen daily? Has it happened more than once? Is there, that kind of thing. So it helps us be able to talk through with children what bullying actually is, and not that when somebody's being mean to you, you need to tell an adult, because we'll help you work through that. But it's not always bullying, right? People can say not nice things, and that doesn't mean that they're bullying you. But we also want students to really know what it is, and we want them to report when they really are being the victims of bullying. So this talks about bullying and what the definition is. It also talks about then cyberbullying and the definition of cyberbullying. This is actually where we're struggling the most in our district, is social media. And unfortunately, I think our students, when they are not face-to-face with others, sometimes feel more at liberty to say unkind things. But it gives a definition of cyberbullying, definition of electronic communication, and the definition of discrimination based on race and what that means. And that's what you're talking about, President Crossman. But we will definitely put that footnote in the policy. So then if you look at page 3, this talks about policies and training established by the Department of Education and standards adopted by the Nevada Council to establish academic standards. So what that has to look like in terms of us working with students and teaching students how to report bullying, how to respond when they're frustrated so they don't act out in an inappropriate way and bullying other other students without meaning to, those types of things. So this talks about the types of training that we do for not only staff, but also for students around bullying and cyberbullying. And then if you look at page 4, it talks about the fact that we are required to have a board policy that talks about bullying and cyberbullying, and the fact that discrimination based on race is prohibited in our schools, and that we have to have this accessible to the public. So again, that's why I want to make a note to folks that board policies and regulations are not just for the board or not just for school site administration. They are actually for our stakeholders. And if our stakeholders are curious about what we're required to do or how we implement state law, that's often where you'll find that in board policies and regulations. The part that gets really to the crux of the matter is under Roman numeral 4, which talks about the requirements and methods for reporting violations and investigations. So this part, again, I won't read it piece by piece, that this literally talks about the responsibilities of students to report, the responsibilities of employees to report, the responsibilities of school administrators to investigate. It has the timelines that have to be followed. It has all the steps that have to be followed, and it has all of the documentation that has to be followed. So there are a lot of requirements when you do a bullying, cyberbullying, or discrimination based on race investigation. All parties, so the victim as well as the aggressor, their parents and their families have to be notified that an investigation is taking place. And then we question all parties, and when we come to a resolute or to determination whether or not bullying, cyberbullying, or discrimination based on race was actually founded, then we have to also go back and notify all parties again. And then it gets documented. And so it tells you the timelines for that. We have 5 days for investigation, but within 24 hours after completing the report, then we need to notify families of what the outcomes were. So it lays that all out so that families, again, know that timeline.
Trustee Varner?
I just want to clarify, when you interview students, the policy says the parent or guardian has to be notified. Do they need to be present during the interview?
No, parents and guardians do not need to be present. We do notify them, again, that.
They could be if they wanted. Is that correct or no?
So technically speaking, yes, they could, but we definitely prefer to talk to students usually without their parents involved or their guardians involved. They're more apt to tell the truth. And we also try to get them as soon as possible after the incident has occurred. So we would not deny a parent or guardian access to be in there when we're questioning students, but we do tell parents it is much more likely that their children will be honest with us if their parent is not there.
Thank you.
In some cases. In some
Well-
cases, you know.
So under the cyberbullying, it talks about like pictures, that would be. So do we have anything, because then it just, identifies one way, but do we have anything out there that, say, for students who are videotaping a fight? What do we have that is going to hold that student accountable? Would it be under this as well? Because they're taping it, they're posting it on social media.
So it depends on, it's always, context is important when you're determining what's bullying and cyberbullying. But in that particular scenario that you've stated, that we do have provisions in policy and regulation 525 for taking disciplinary action against a student who is a bystander who does that. Now, if I post it specifically calling out a student and making a comment about, oh, well, look how, lame Tasha Fuson was, she couldn't even, keep up her end of the fight, then that could be considered bullying and could be considered cyberbullying because it's posted on social media or on the internet, on one of those forums, depending on what the student's doing with that is how we would investigate that. But in addition to, if it's just, here, look what's happened at school and I'm posting it, but I'm not making any comments or calling anyone out, it wouldn't be bullying or cyberbullying, wouldn't be covered here. But we address it in 525 with bystanders' responsibility for not, inciting and continuing the antagonism between parties. Okay, so then again on page 8, it actually talks about this is very important, I think, the second bulleted part that says no interference with preventing disclosure of information. Members of the board and district employees are prohibited from directly or indirectly interfering or preventing with the disclosure of information considering bullying, cyberbullying, or discrimination based on race violations. We are required to report for every single school the number of incidences per year, and it goes on to each school's accountability report, and that is available to parents on the Nevada School Performance, or the Nevada Report Card, the school's Nevada School Performance Framework Report Card. So you can see for your individual schools how many incidences they have in each of these areas. So, and then it does talk about appeal of the outcome of investigation. So a parent does have a right to appeal, or a student or a guardian, if they don't agree with the finding of the school. It gives you timelines there, talks about what that looks like. And then of course it talks about the fact that anybody who is a reporter cannot be in trouble, cannot be held accountable or get in trouble for reporting bullying, cyberbullying, or discrimination based on race, unless they are doing so falsely and with the intent of causing problems. So that's in our regulation as well. Page 9 talks more about specifically about the professional development that takes place. We do training every year for staff. And again, we just came off of the Week of Respect for students. The Week of Respect is really was developed at the state level for the intent of bringing awareness and having it done in schools. There's a week, the first week in October every year, that is dedicated to that across the state, to bringing awareness to basically being kind, not bullying, not cyberbullying, not discriminating against others, and again, being aware of making sure that kids know that they are required or asked to report. We are mandatory reporters, but they're asked to report if they ever see that happening. And then page 10 talks about school safety teams. Every school is required to have a school safety team. Talks about who those members are, and that team has to meet at least 2 times a year. And the team is required to look at the data around cyberbullying, and discrimination based on race to determine if there are disproportionalities going on with the school and coming up with corrective action plans if there are. So if we have one group of students who are being bullied more than, not that we want anyone bullied, but overly targeted for bullying incidences, then the schools have to come up with plans to address that. Page 11 again talks about that week of respect at the top. If you look halfway down the page at Roman numeral 9, this one I thought was interesting, but it's important to put in there: employee bullying, cyberbullying, and discrimination based on race. So obviously we don't address, or we don't allow that within our district either, but this policy is specific for students. We do have policies under employees that address how to file a complaint if an employee feels like they're being harassed or discriminated against. And Roman numeral 10 talks about failure to report violations, and again, makes just basically talking about the fact that we are all mandatory reporters. And if we do not, or if we fail to report, then we can be held accountable for that, and disciplinary action can be taken. And yeah, basically public notification in Roman numeral 11 talks about the fact that we, again, have to do what we can to notify folks of this. So most of you know, even though this year we had revisions, even if we don't have revisions, every year on an annual basis, I bring this policy and regulation in front of the board just so that we can review what our processes are and what we're required to do. So this is acting not only as the update to policy and regulation 543, but also as our annual review of policy and regulation 543 to make sure that you are all aware, and as a means for us to try to help communicate to our community what those requirements are. I am happy to answer any questions.
Trustee Walt.
So for the school report card, is it just if it's found, the bullying report is found validated, goes on the report card, or all of, if anything is even reported?
Those that are validated.
Yeah.
Yeah, not necessarily just invest. Our schools launch many investigations because as we should be, we are required by law to do so. But in many cases, they're found not to be bullying or cyberbullying or discrimination, and a lot of times it's just students who aren't getting along. So again, we still address that, and I want families to know that when students are having difficulty with their peers, we still address it. So even though it might be unfounded as a bullying investigation, but we still go through the process of investigating, communicating with families, and we still go through with writing safety plans and helping support those students so that they can have that conflict management, the skills to be able to resolve that. So yes, but what we are reporting are only those that are founded.
Oh, go ahead, Trustee Walker.
I was just going to say you did a thorough job explaining a very complex process. And so thanks to our administrators, it's a lot of work, but it's also important work because we certainly want our schools to be safe. We don't want children being bullied or discriminated against. But as you said, a lot of times bullying is a buzzword, and sometimes you have kindergartners or first graders who just socially don't know how to play well together. And so it's inappropriate. It's not necessarily bullying. You know what I mean? And so it's complex. And so the question about like somebody filming a fight or two kids that are frenemies, you know what I mean? They might be friends in a fight 2-3 times a day. It's all very complex. And so it just kind of, for anybody paying attention, thank an administrator. It's a lot of work. And then I think a lot of these changes the legislature made are good. They're given more time to do thorough investigations because, a lot of this information, you get information, then sometimes it starts trickling out, but that time is ticking away. And so you're trying to get it all so quick. So thank you.
Trustee Varner.
Just to clarify, the training that the board receives, is that the pool pack training, the online pool pack training that we've gotten in the past?
So yes, there's So you have the pool pack training that we send out to all of you. It comes to your district email. And then again, this annual, at least review of our regulation and the steps that schools are required to take. So both we report as training for you.
Tasha, question for you. I know this is a very, very important topic and a very important information for our parents to be aware of. Have you guys considered doing some workshops to disseminate this information to parents?
That is a good recommendation, Trustee Ramirez, and I'm happy to bring that back to our school sites and see if we might be able to do that. Yeah.
I think it would be very helpful, for our parents to be aware of how to help their children when they're in this situation. Because I do hear it in the community that they're like, I think my son or daughter have been bullied, but they don't know who to go to, or they're afraid, or they're scared. I think this would clarify a lot of misconceptions.
Trustee Clapham.
Thank you. Yeah, so I was, this is for the board and the community awareness. I was recently made aware by a parent fairly close to me of a substantiated bullying report of their child, and they were extremely happy with the professionalism and confidential nature that the bullying report was handled and how prompt it was. So I just wanted to ensure that I do believe good things are happening. Administrators are doing the right thing. And I hope the community and you guys are aware of that because, yeah, it happened. And so, and I did let Mr. Fueling know that this parent was extremely thankful and proud of the way it happened.
Thank you very much, Trustee Clapham. I also think that's a good segue to remind everyone that we do have Safe Voice. Safe Voice, there are posters throughout all of our schools. It's also on our website. So if you don't know who to report to, or if you're concerned parent and you can go online to Safe Voice, you can make that report. Those reports come to Superintendent Fueling, they come to me, they come to our risk manager, and then they go to all site administrators. So, and then we respond to those immediately as well. So if our families out there are ever afraid to approach the school or just don't know who at the school to talk to, they are always encouraged to use Safe Voice as a mechanism to communicate with the schools. That's and or students out there. Students often are the ones that see it the most. So if you're afraid of any of your peers being bullied and you're just afraid to make a report, use Safe Voice.
You said, I'm sorry, you said that's anonymous? Is that anonymous? Safe
It
Voice?
is. You can make an anonymous tip. You have a choice. You can report who you are, but you can make an anonymous tip. It is responded to immediately by a live person. So there's interaction that goes through the app. They'll ask further questions. So if a student says, and this can be used not just for bullying and cyberbullying, this can be used for any situation where someone is concerned about another person. So we get sometimes child abuse, neglect types of things that are also reported, but you just, you put in what your concerns are. The person on the other end, which is often our social workers man it a lot, will ask prompting questions. Can you tell me more about that? Do you know who that person might be? Try to get as much information as we can so that we have a better way to try to investigate those concerns. But it is addressed immediately. So that line is monitored 24/7. So there's always a live person that's going to get back to you immediately when you put in a report on that.
Thank you for that information. And one more comment that I'd like to make on page 2. When I was looking, and maybe I'm getting lost with the Roman numeral 1, A, B, 1, and then the lowercase letters, but it looks to me like on page 2, the number 2 for this term and the number 3 this term at the top of the page should possibly be a lowercase d and e because they fall under bullying, and then the next 2 is the next one. So I don't know what that means for the ABC if they go to the little tiny dots, little Roman numerals, but
I am seeing exactly what you're pointing out. So
Okay.
we'll make sure we look at the formatting
okay.
on
I
that.
was like, am I following? I
Yep,
can't
nope, I
remember
think
how
you're
far you go
correct. I
in
think
on that,
that's,
so-
yep, we will fix that. Thank you for
Okay,
pointing it out.
Thank you. Do we have any other comments on this? Thank you for that very thorough explanation and also for the, I've just heard Safe Voice is being used throughout the state, and it is a very useful tool for schools and students' safety. So thank you for that information about that. We'll move on to agenda item 11, which is annual review of the manner in which statewide performance evaluation system for teachers and administrators is carried out in the Carson City School District as required by NRS 391.485, subsection 2, for discussion only. Dan Sadler.
Thank you, President Crossman. Nice to see you again, members of the board. It is my pleasure to present to you information. This is required per NRS that we review the Nevada Educator Performance Framework, the manner in which we carry out certified and administrative evaluations in our school district per law. So this is just kind of laying that out as far as the LEA, that we annually review this manner in which, again, schools carry out the evaluation of teachers and administrators for the statewide performance evaluation system. So just kind of a quick review. The evaluation cycle is kind of laid out in these 5 steps, and it starts with the educator self-assessment. And really, when I'm talking about educator, that it's very similar for administrators and for teachers, other licensed professionals. We follow this same cycle. So it begins with the self-assessment based on the standards that are in the framework. The pre-evaluation conference and goal setting and plan development is step 2. Then we move into step 3, which is implementing the plan. That's where we start having observations, additional conferences. We start the evidence review. I should mention that step 2, typically that goal setting and plan development includes a conversation about the SLG, or student learning goal, which I'll get into a little bit more here. So as we start collecting evidence, people start collecting evidence to support the SLG. Step 4 being the mid-cycle review is just kind of a check-in point. And usually that's a good opportunity for the evaluator and the evaluatee to both have a conversation about where we are so far in the process. My own experience as an administrator, often I would have a lot of evidence at that point, and in conversation with the teacher, if we were completed in the process, like we could really be done with the evaluation quite early often. Other times, we really needed to dig a little bit deeper, and it was really good conversation at that point to say, hey, I've got lots of evidence in these areas and feedback, but I haven't really seen this. So let's talk about that and kind of gear the evaluation towards moving that direction. And then finally, step 5 is the summative evaluation, which includes a post-evaluation conference. The category weights and kind of the way things are broken down are shared here, and you can see that there are educational practice standards that's broken down into instructional practice and professional responsibilities. Those standards are then listed below those categories, and you can see that the weighting here is instructional practice at 65%, professional responsibilities at 20%. And then over on the right side, student performance, and that is really the student learning goal. You may hear a lot of discussion about the student learning goal, and essentially you are creating a proficiency target by creating a goal and then measuring how you do in implementing the instructional practice professional responsibilities to impact student learning in your classroom or in your school for administrators. And then as we work through that summative assessment, there ends up being an overall score range. There is, again, a framework and the documents that we utilize for NEPF. In Carson City School District, we actually use a program called Evaluize, which really just kind of simplifies that process for us. So when we put information in, It helps us with how these weights impact the overall scoring. But you can see if you score between a 3.6 and a 4.0, that's highly effective. And typically, highly effective is a little bit more difficult to achieve. Like you really are doing a little bit more than what that standard is, a lot more in most cases to earn those higher marks. 2.8 to 3.59 is effective. 1.91 to 2.79 is developing, and a 1.0 to 1.9 would be considered ineffective. And then within that scoring, again, the weighting of the SLG counts as 15% of the overall evaluation score. And educators must demonstrate a rubric score of 2, 3, or 4 to be eligible to receive an effective summative rating. And it needs to be a 3 or a 4 score on that SLG to receive a highly effective summative rating. So this is information specific to our school district based on last school year and our educator performance on the NEPF. We do not have any audiologists that are evaluated with the NEPF, so you'll see NA across that top row. And then as we go down, you'll see school administrators, total of 24. And as you go from left to right on that screen, you'll see ineffective, developing, effective, highly effective, and exempt. If somebody was exempt, that means that they were highly effective for 2 years in a row. And it's a little misleading when we say exempt because it's like, yay, we don't have to do evaluation this year, but we still have to complete the process. What ends up happening is then there's no score turned in. There's a different form that we complete to just say, due to this educator being highly effective for 2 years, the score is exempt for the year. So I will say it's a lot less work for the person being evaluated and the person doing the evaluation, but we still complete a pre-conference, an observation, and a post-conference in addition to an SLG. So as you go down, you'll see school counselors, school nurse, school psychologists, school social workers, speech language pathologists, teacher librarians, and teachers, and the scores across our district. So overall, as a school district, we have 98.4% of our educators as effective or higher, which is an outstanding number. The little asterisks there at the bottom can be confusing. That is indicating that there is a class size ratio adjustment. And so the state has created a very complex way to equalize certain classroom sizes with a little bit of a weight increase, so that if you were to score, let's say, a 3 on one specific standard, with the areas that the state has noted as being impacted by a class size adjustment, you might get a little bit of a boost to like a 3.06 that might help boost your score. So you can see that there were some people who had a little bit of a bump for the class size adjustment ratio in that number, but overall, it doesn't really impact the score very much. And like I said, that part can be confusing. Last year, I had data that we looked at that was kind of comparing how we did statewide. I'll just note that I don't have that information available yet. I do know they had a couple changes in staffing at the state level. I would anticipate that we'll be able to look at that later this year. I think that's just really interesting for us to look at and kind of see how we're performing against our colleagues in other districts. But we do not have that information available just yet. Here's a little bit more information that I was referring to with the class size ratio adjustment, and this is the way it's explained in the manual for NEPF. Essentially, if you're in grades K through 3, the state board recommends 15 pupils per one licensed teacher, and 4 through 12, 25 pupils per one licensed teacher. So there, again, can be an increase in the score if you're not within those numbers. And there are some specific subjects that are not included in this. I know like music is one that doesn't get that same boost because typically music classes by the design of the course they're larger. This is a breakdown of the individual scores that were ranked the highest for instructional practices. That's what the IPS is. So you can see if we're going to look at like the school administrators there, their highest was indicator 3, and we averaged a 3.45 as a group for administrators in that. The lowest was instructional indicator 4, and that average as a group was 3.24. So that being the lowest, it's still above effective as an average district-wide. And as you scoot down to the bottom of this chart, you can see that for our teachers, standard 2 was the highest, averaging 3.46, and the lowest was 3.17. As we shift to the right, that represents the professional standards. So again, school administrators, I'll just highlight that one. Indicator 3 was the highest. Indicator 4 was the lowest. Or excuse me, standard, I'm saying indicator. Standard 3 was the highest. Standard 4 was the lowest for administrators. And then as we scoot down to the bottom, again, you'll see teachers. The highest professional responsibility score was standard 5, and the lowest was standard 4. You can also see the average SLG score. And I think overall, we're very proud of this, the job that our administrators and teachers do and the work that they put into the evaluation. It's not an afterthought. It's something that they put a lot of time, energy, and effort into. And I applaud everybody for the work that goes into and the time that goes into completing the evaluation. It is a lot. But these scores also validate a lot of that hard work. So I just shared with you like what the highest and lowest scores were. This is just showing you what is represented in those standards. So again, on the left side, the highest instructional leadership practice, or what was ILP on the previous slide, for school administrators was creating and sustaining productive relationships. The lowest for our school administrators was creating and sustaining structures. For the teachers, the highest was learning tasks having high cognitive demand for diverse learners. And then the lowest was the students engaging in metacognitive activity to increase understanding of and responsibility for their own learning. But again, those are still above effective as an average with the district, which is a celebration. For the professional responsibilities for school administrators, standard 3, professional obligations was the highest. Family and community engagement was the lowest. For teachers, the highest was student perception, and the lowest was reflection on professional growth and practice. This is going back to one of my earlier slides with the category weights. And 2 years ago, there was a pause on SLGs after we were coming back to school from COVID. Last year was the first year that they were back, and I just wanted to represent that, again, SLGs will represent 15% of the overall evaluation score this school year. So specific to the SLG, I think it's really important that we approach this as a school district and a community of learners, that the SLG is not something that's done to anybody. It's really a professional practice to say, where are my students in their learning specific to a standard, could be multiple standards, but where are my students? How does my instruction support them? Or if it's in the case of administrator, how do my practices as a school administrator support them in their growth as learners? And so this, again, is in the framework that supports NEPF that's given to all educators from the state, but really just describing the steps of the SLG. And that first one is to develop and approve the SLG. That's most effective when it's a two-way conversation between the evaluator and the person being evaluated to say, this is what I'm thinking about doing, what's your feedback, how are we going to be able to identify data and evidence that would support a score that we're going to be happy with at the end of this. And often through that process, we try something and it doesn't work well, and we go back and revisit that goal and make adjustments. And you know, teaching is dynamic in itself, that it's not going to be something we just plan and we do, and regardless of the result, we just continue moving forward. We don't want it to be that. So I think SLGs help, though they can be frustrating, and there's a lot of conversation about them, and many people wish they would just go away. They're also very valuable in our practice of looking at where our students are and then how the work that we do as educators can impact future results of our students. This is the rubric for scoring SLGs. So hopefully this is part of the conversation in that pre-conference with all educators as we're deciding, mutually what these SLGs are going to be to support these scores overall at the end of this process. It's important to note that to score a level 4, at least one source of growth or achievement from multiple points in time shows evidence of high growth and high impact for all or nearly all students on which the SLG was set. And that's really hard to do because you're showing high growth and high impact for all or nearly all students. And again, language here could be very important because what does nearly all mean? If it says all or nearly all, like what does that mean? So having a thorough understanding and agreement of that between the person completing the evaluation on both ends is critical. And then as we go down, you can see level 3 lightens up a little bit. At least one source of growth or achievement from multiple points in time shows clear evidence of growth and impact for most students on which the SLG was set. Moving down into the 2, it's for some students. And then level 1 would be that the educator has not met the expectations described in the SLG and has demonstrated an insufficient impact on student learning. There are some regulations from NRS that guide how we choose quality assessments. And so first and foremost, a high quality assessment needs to be something that's based on a standard. We're not just going to choose some random thought that hey, I think I might be able to get some really good data here that would show high growth and high impact. It really should be based on a learning target and a standard. I know that there's often conversation at the state level and the federal level about, well, if we have these teacher and administrator evaluations that show these high scores, how come like our SBAC scores don't reflect that same level? And I think that as we work through the evaluation process, we're talking about college educated professionals who are putting a lot of time and energy into looking at what these standards are and how the work they do to support it is impacting student learning. And obviously our goal for everybody is to be moving student achievement up and forward. But there's not always a direct correlation between the work that the educator is putting into that and the result and the output that we're getting on the back end. So SLGs are a way to help bridge that gap, both for the instructor and the educator and their practices in the classroom, and ultimately for students and their learning on the back end. So there are some recommendations from the state as far as how choosing quality assessments to support student learning goals should be in alignment with the content standards and the curriculum, alignment with the intended level of rigor. And that's very important as well, because if we don't have rigor, then we're often not really meeting the spirit of what that standard is. Let's see. Oh, I wanted to throw this in here just for anybody watching. We are hiring. We are CarsonCitySchools.com, if anyone's interested. Give me a call, Dan Sadler, Associate Superintendent of Human Resources. I guess that was my last slide. So I've been talking an awful lot here, and it's time to open up for any questions or clarifications.
Go ahead, Trustee Clapham.
So for just a couple questions. For the individuals who fall in the ineffective or developing categories, what type of like remediation? Is there like mentoring? Is it someone co-teaching with you? What takes place there?
really depends on the situation, and where the educator is in their career could also play a different role in how I answer that question. So like this is looking at last year's data, and you can see we had 2 employees district-wide who were rated ineffective. And I know that those individuals this is at the summative evaluation. So long before we get to the summative evaluation, there's feedback, there's conversation, there's collaboration, there's observation, there's evidence gathering. And along with that, there's also coaching. And that's not always just from the evaluator, that's from a number of staff members that we have district-wide. As you know, we have site mentors, we have a district mentor, we have coaches on site. This district is stacked with really good supports to help our teachers. That when we look at the feedback from our staff, like what are some of the best things about working for this district, time and time again, we see I get all kinds of support, and there's a lot of resources there. So without getting into details and singling out these 2 scores here, I will say that there are a whole lot of supports and a lot of time and energy and effort putting in to try to bring those people up in the conversation. There are tools built into the NEPF that are supported that I'm not reviewing here with you here tonight as well, including a formal plan of assistance, which puts more responsibility on the person being evaluated, but also puts a lot of responsibility on the person completing the evaluation to help structure that support and ensure that the educator gets the tools and the support that they need to help that improve. What you're seeing here is a result of the summative evaluation and final score. It also could be that if somebody is not effective as a first-year probationary teacher, that we would recommend non-renewal. That has happened in the past. But we really try to take pride in identifying the needs of our students and helping them learn. And we take the same approach with our staff, that people who have a heart to work with students and they want to come work in our district, we want to help them improve if there's something that we can do to meet their needs and help them become a better educator.
And then what happens at post-probationary? If they're
Same process.
same process?
Yeah, same process.
So their contract couldn't be renewed or wouldn't be renewed, or is that
well,
staffed?
No, so as far as the details about like probationary is a 3-year process. First year probationary, then you become a second-year probationary. So like as a first-year probationary educator, you don't have an SLG that's incorporated as part of your score. It's really weighted differently within the professional and instructional categories. As you move into a second-year probationary teacher or educator, administrator, then you do have an SLG. Those instructional weights shift. The requirements for evaluation shift as well. So a probationary educator has a minimum of 3 full cycles through the evaluation, whereas a second-year probation or second and third-year probationary both have a minimum requirement of 1 cycle. And that's really designed to hopefully provide support where it's needed most. A lot of teachers are going to be having a lot of success and not need additional supports and evaluations and observations. And that hopefully is allowing the administrator to provide the support where it's most needed. Once somebody becomes post-probationary, all of those tools are still embedded. But as far as a non-renewal goes, it would take several additional steps to end up in that type of situation.
Okay. And then one other question. Could you go to that tree that you had of all the percentages?
Did I have a tree?
Yeah, your little tree you made there.
This one?
Yeah.
You got
So student, I don't know. I have no idea. The student performance, 15% on the right side there.
Mhm.
I just want to make sure I heard this right. So you explain that is the teacher placing goals or making goals for the students and then the students reaching those goals? Or is that actually like the kids are not passing and the teachers are being graded on whether the kids are actually learning?
It's a good question, and I think this is where a lot of confusion comes from SLGs. Like, well, what is it, and how do we decide what it is? And so I pulled this slide up because I think this best kind of highlights what goes into the SLG. And really, first and foremost, is if you're going to choose an SLG, you're going to focus on a standard or a group of standards? What is it that students in my classroom, in my school, should know and be able to do according to a grade level target? And I'm also including administrators, because they're held to the same accountability, but they're not teaching a group of students. So it's the lens looks different when we're talking about administrative SLGs, because it's more school through this tool. But the first step is really to identify something that is going to be taught, something you have your hand in as an educator on that campus with those students that you can have an impact on in your setting.
That's perfect.
Following up on, yeah, his tree. Well, no, not your tree. We're going to go back to the other one. The SLGs, do they have to be the same for each student? Or can a teacher identify, SLGs to be specific to each individual?
So SLGs are designed to identify a group of students, and that for some teachers, they decide, I'm going to do my first period class because I see that they've got the biggest challenge with this standard. So they may identify, I'm going to do my entire first period class. Again, collaborative process with the evaluating administrator would be the teacher would then suggest that to the administrator, and then they talk through it. Okay, how are we going to assess this goal, this standard based on that group? It could be that maybe you're a special education teacher and you have a group of 10 students who have a common goal per their IEP that's related to a learning target or standard. And so maybe that's going to be a really effective SLG for you to highlight given what your teaching assignment looks like. So when you decide on what your SLG is going to be, it's not going to be on one student. It's going to be on a group of students. But ultimately, you're deciding that in conjunction with the person who's doing the evaluation.
So then with the evidence, who chooses the evidence on whether or not that SLG is being?
Largely presented by the teacher who's completing the SLG, or in the admin case, the administrator. Again, I'm going to keep highlighting, it really should be collaborative in that decision making. SLGs should be approved by the person who's going to be doing the evaluation, who's going to complete the evaluation. So that, and I think that's critical so that you have good communication through the process, and we're kind of agreeing to what our understanding is of what is the target going to be, how are we going to measure it, how are we going to collect evidence to know how to score this on the end of, when we're completed with this process, so that we're not surprised when we see those results. I think even sometimes having conversations about the definition within the rubric become really important, because if I say, okay, Mr. Walker, you're going to score your students on a 4-point scale, if you're going to say that a level 3 is going to be high impact or high growth, then what's a level 4? Right? And so to be able to have those conversations organically between the person who's being evaluated and the person who's doing the evaluation, I can't say it enough. Like, it really should be collaborative so that there's a really good, solid understanding of what success is going to look like. And usually that leads you to how you're going to plug in the evidence, because if you can define what success will look like at the end of that goal, it's a lot easier to collect evidence as you go through that process. And it could be that, well, I need to collect at least one source of achievement data from multiple points in time. So that first time, student achievement may go down, right? But then that second time around, maybe it goes up. Well, there's one point in time that I had growth and impact. So now let's measure it. Was it high growth or high impact? Or was it just clear evidence of growth and impact for most students? Or was it all students? And that all becomes part of the conversation that really drives the SLG and what that output looks like at the end of it.
And is there opportunity then to eliminate outliers? Like, say, for example, habitual absenteeism, because that person's not there, they're not learning, they're not participating. So is there?
Could be. I would say it's part of that agreement with the evaluator and in this case, the teacher. If we have a student who was part of that control group, like, they're a part of that control group, but there may be extenuating circumstances where we say, hey, I haven't seen that student at all in the previous 2 months. So they were part of that control group initially. They haven't seen them at all. and maybe we need to just not count that data point. On the same token, if they have been there, even if they have missed school or had multiple things going on, perhaps, it's still a data point that we want to consider because it becomes important as far as was it all or nearly all. And there's reasons, same with looking at SBAC data, why some students are successful and some aren't. But we can't just choose to say, well, but there's reasons for all these ones, so let's don't count them. Like being accountable is being accountable for all students that we have.
So
And so that is part of the conversation.
So what part of SBAC is in here?
None.
Okay, and the maps testing?
There are teachers who choose map data for their SLGs. Certainly, I think that's pretty common at the elementary level because that is a really good, high valid assessment that they're going to be giving throughout the year in multiple points. I think it puts a little bit more pressure on I think it puts more pressure on the teacher then to make sure that they get things done in their classroom. And I don't know, data till long after the evaluation was completed. So, yeah.
You know, someone's sister in the room had great advice for a group of administrators that was meeting with her and the Department of Ed about SLGs. And really, what they were encouraging teachers is to pick a standard. And, you know, sometimes with a map assessment, it's hard because it's hard to drill down and say, well, I can show standard. And so I think the most important thing is that it is a discussion between the teacher and the administrator, but then also there's time to collaborate because you have to make it so early in the year. And that's what that mid-cycle review is. You might change your assessment. You might modify if all of a sudden you have, you know, you were working with a group of kids and 10 of those kids moved away, you're going to have to recalibrate because you're not going to do your SLG on one person probably. So it's a tough one sometimes.
It is. Any other questions?
Thank you for that very thorough explanation and our annual review of it.
Thank you very much.
We'll move on to agenda item 12, which is approval of the consent agenda for possible action. Motion by trustee Walker, second by trustee Walt. Do we have any further discussion on this? Any public comment? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And that is approved. And we will move on to agenda item 13, which is informational items. For discussion only, no action will be taken. Do we have any questions or comments on the informational items? Seeing none, we'll move on to agenda item 14, which is requests for future agenda topics. Do we have any requests? Trustee Varner.
I would just make another request that in the near future, we have this school star rating presentation.
It's off. Superintendent Fueling said that's set for the second meeting of this month.
I figured it might be, but thank you.
Do we have any other future agenda requests at this time?
I do.
Okay.
I would like to see a presentation on the dual enrollment programs on Jumpstart and AP programs. I'd like to see an update on that. And I would like to suggest that we have a student come and provide a testimonial. Those are always very helpful. It's very insightful to hear, you know, the student's perspective. So if we can get a student to join the group, that'd be great.
We will put that on the calendar. We are coming down to the end of this school year or this term. Joe, did you say something?
I was just going to chime in on that, just to support what Trustee Romero said. I think as part of that presentation, when we can get around to doing it, I like having the numbers of who's enrolled and whatnot, but I am curious about, you know, the challenges associated with it, the support that goes in with programs, or a well-rounded presentation, if you will.
Okay. We'll put that on the list. there are no other requests for future agenda topics at this time, we are adjourned. Item 15. Thanks, guys.